Coming to you from the mountains and the plain. The only conservative voices brave enough to push back. This is the Conservative Daily Podcast with Joe Otto.
That's what the Second Amendment was designed to do. If you're going to do something to nullify or take away my rights under the Constitution, come get it.
Max McGuire.
When you look at politicians on the left, they need to convince people that they are victims.
A resistance to the resistance. And now your hosts, Joe Otto and Max McGuire.
And welcome back to another edition of the Conservative Daily Podcast. My name is Max McGuire, solo today because Joe Otto is out in Vegas playing golf. So we're going to run this solo, which is, we got a lot to do today. Obviously, you know that the debate is tonight. That's going to be very exciting. The last and final debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Interestingly enough, they've decided not to include foreign policy in this debate. It's kind of crazy that they're not doing that. Go back decades. The third debate has always included foreign policy. It's always been foreign policy centric. But once again, they're talking about COVID-19. Once again, they're talking about race issues in America, climate change, even though climate change polls at the very bottom of people's actual concerns. It almost feels like they're picking the topics so that Joe Biden doesn't need to memorize any more answers. But those are the topics. Them's the topics. So we're going to do a mock debate, and this is how it's going to work. Anyone who watched the last one knows how this works. Joe Otto isn't on. We have a video message we're going to play from him in a second. I guess him out golfing. This is how it's going to work. Our producer, Josh. Josh, say hi.
Hello, everyone.
All right, put in the comment section, make sure you can hear Josh, and I'm not just hearing him in my head. Producer Josh is going to be the anti-Trump moderator. He's going to be asking very loaded questions. The questions are designed to be very loaded, to be very hostile. Don't take it out on Josh. Josh, last time you did this, people were complaining about your questions.
Yes, they were angry at me, and I just wanted to let them know that I'm reading from a script just like Joe Biden is. So
yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry, teleprompter. I'm sorry, something in my ear. I'm getting confused. I'm
exactly.
sorry. Where are we?
So don't be mad at Josh because Josh didn't write the questions. There's one piece of hair that's just completely stuck. Josh didn't write the questions. I did. So don't be mad at him. They're designed to be deliberately inflammatory. So Josh will ask the questions. I will answer the questions the way that I want Donald Trump to tonight. And last time we did this, we had some luck. Some of the questions we ran with were actually what they asked at the debate. Tonight, I don't know if we're going to have the same luck, but I think a lot of these questions we can guarantee are going to be on it. So without further ado, I guess we can get started. Josh, did they send out the text? Oh, yeah, we'll send out the Joe video. Did they send out the text, Josh?
They will have it in just a moment. He is shortening our URLs, and you guys will all be getting it very, very soon.
Yeah. So our normal tech people are out. I guess they're on holiday or whatever. No, they're not British. Why would I say on holiday? They're on vacation. So we are having someone else run the text, and they don't usually do it, so they're trying to figure it out. So bear with us. If you're here watching already, then you don't need to be hearing this. And if you didn't get the text and aren't here, then I don't really know why I'm talking to you about it. But the text will be going out in a second. So let's go ahead and play this video. This is Joe bragging about how he's out on the golf course in Las Vegas and can't be with us today. Let's go ahead and play the Joe video.
Hey everyone, Joe here. Hey listen, I'm not going to be with you today because I'm out in Las Vegas at the Shadow Creek Golf Course doing a charity tournament for the Children's Diabetes Foundation. I know that Max is going to be answering some questions for Josh at a mock debate, hoping that President Trump actually uses some of our answers. And that is if Biden even shows up, given all the bad press that he's had over the last couple days. Maybe he won't make it out of his basement. But anyway, lots of love for you. God bless you. And I'll see you guys on Monday.
So that was Joe enjoying Shadow Creek. Josh, have you ever played Shadow Creek?
I have not. I've never
I have.
get to go
It's very
on
fun.
these. Have you?
Not on one of these charity things. I did it for another event. And
Yeah.
Shadow Creek's a great golf course. They have wild turkeys. It's right near the Air Force area where they dogfight,
Yes,
so you
yes.
get to see like F-22s dogfighting overhead. Very cool stuff. Amazing course.
Joe
I'm very
did share
jealous.
with me that the pins are currently set up for the pro players who were there yesterday, so we'll see how his game is today.
Yeah, and Joe, just for the record, Joe does hit from the men's tees. He does not hit from the ladies' tees. I don't know who started that rumor, but that rumor is completely false.
It is completely false.
So we're gonna get started. Not gonna be able to watch too much of the comments, but we'll see if anyone has some quick, witty reactions. So let's go ahead. We're gonna get started, and this is our mock debate.
Mr. President, thank you so much for joining us tonight. How are you?
Awesome, totally amazing. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna do the impression.
All right, here we go.
That's gonna get really old. Very good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Mr. President, the United States has more COVID-19 cases and deaths than any other country on earth. Explain to the American people why your response to the pandemic wasn't a complete and abject failure.
So it's interesting that you phrased the question that way. We have the most cases because we do the most testing. And when you have a disease like COVID-19, where you have so many asymptomatic carriers, if you don't have a broad testing regimen, those cases do not get identified. People just go about their daily life without being registered as a positive case. So we have an increase in cases because this is a very communicable disease. But what we're not seeing is a increase in mortality the way we were in the early days of the pandemic, where when cases increased, they said, okay, the deaths are going to increase in X number of days. It was a predictor. You could actually tell that when cases went up, you could tell that the deaths would soon follow. That all stopped in late spring, early summer because of the therapeutics, because of the different ways that we're treating people who get the virus. Getting the virus is no longer a death sentence. I had the virus, and I feel like I'm stronger now than I was when I went in. And one of the things that my administration is doing is making sure that the treatments I received are going to be available free at zero cost for anyone who contracts the virus. They gave me experimental drugs. They worked amazing. Every American deserves to have access to that. So I reject the whole notion that it was an abject failure, because the experts predicted that if we did it wrong, we would see 2 million deaths. They said even if we did everything right, we did everything perfectly, we'd still see around 200,000 deaths. So I reject the notion that it's an abject failure. The only people saying that are people like you, Josh, in the anti-Trump media, and Joe Biden, who knows that the only path to the White House is for him to politicize COVID-19. Listen, any death is a tragedy, but the fact that they are trying to use this to get people to buy in to their radical socialist ideals, the idea that because we have a respiratory virus, we should start voting for someone who supports third trimester abortion, who supports giving healthcare, free healthcare to every single illegal alien. These are radical policy ideas. And this idea that we're going to use the pandemic to try and usher this in the back door, absolutely insane. So I reject the notion that my response was an abject failure. We did everything within our power to save lives. The problem that we ran up against was that we had idiots like Andrew Cuomo in New York or Governor Whitmer in Michigan who thought it was a good idea to put COVID-positive patients into nursing homes. Now, I get that this was a novel coronavirus. We didn't know everything at the time, but we knew that putting COVID-positive patients into nursing homes deliberately would lead to more deaths. So it's very interesting that this is all being put on me. I can take it. These are the slings and arrows. This is the cross I have to bear. I get it.
All right.
But if we want to be really honest,
thank you.
If we want to be really honest,
Thank you.
Whitmer, Cuomo, these idiot governors bear a lot of the blame.
Very good. Mr. Trump, the next question is to you. Over the weekend, you were caught in a Las Vegas church not wearing a mask. Why do you care about people so little that you would advocate against wearing masks? And you've been accused of being a super spreader before.
So it's really interesting the way you worded the question. Caught in a church. I wasn't caught in a church. I went to church, and the reason I didn't have to wear a mask is because I am now immune to COVID-19. There's some debate about how long the antibodies will remain in your system, but there isn't a single doctor out there that believes that right now I am either contagious or susceptible to the virus. So I went to church because it was Sunday, and now that I have this new lease on life, I can go out and I can go to church without being accused of being a super spreader or putting myself in danger. The fact that people are trying to take pictures of me at church without a mask and blow that out of proportion, claim that I'm super spreading or I'm putting myself at risk or others at risk, it simply isn't true scientifically. So for the party that says follow the science, follow the science, follow the science, it's amazing that they throw science to the wind as soon as they think that it would benefit them politically. So this idea that we don't care about anyone because I didn't wear a mask to church after I've already contracted the virus and I have the antibodies in my system, it's just insane.
Well, don't you think the president should lead by example, though? Don't you think you should wear a mask in public to show Americans how important it is?
Well, it's an interesting question because if we're going to deal with masks as science, if this idea of follow the science, then you should also follow the science when it says you don't need to wear a mask. And scientists, especially the scientists we have, the doctors we have in the White House, have said that when everyone is being tested, the need for masks are a lot lower than if you were in an area where no one was tested. So the tests aren't perfect, and that's probably how I ended up contracting the disease. But when you test everyone and you make sure that no one can get within arm's reach of me unless they test negative for the virus, this idea that I have to wear a mask as a good example, that's not following the science. That's propaganda, right? If we want to talk about the utility of masks, we can talk about the utility of masks, where despite what the fact checkers say, there was a CDC study that interviewed people who had contracted coronavirus, I believe in June and July, and they asked them, how often do you wear masks? And 85% of the people in that study who had contracted the coronavirus said that they wear a mask often or always. So this idea that masks will keep you safe always, it's been proven to not be true. If that was the case in this one study, and again, it's just one study, you wouldn't be seeing that 85% of the people who had tested positive always or often wear masks. So we can have the discussion about the utility of masks, but if you're going to tell me that I should wear masks as a point of propaganda to convince people that even if it's not medically necessary, they should still be doing it, I'm out. I'm not interested in spreading your propaganda. I'm too busy. I have too much on my plate to be worried about spreading your anti-Trump, your virus propaganda.
All right, Mr. President, I'd like to pivot now to American families, and I would like to remind you that if you do interrupt your opponent one more time, we will be muting your microphone. But now we move on to American families. Mr. President, you have often claimed that Americans are better off now than 4 years ago. Don't you realize the American people know you're lying?
Such a horrible question, Josh. Such a horrible question. The American people can see what you're up to. No, there was a recent poll that showed the majority of Americans actually do believe that they are better off now than they were 4 years ago. And I think that speaks a ton about where we were under the Biden-Obama administration. We are in the middle of a pandemic where most of the economy is still either locked down or heavily restricted. Kids aren't allowed to be going back to school. We have unemployment going up, not because of anything I've done, but because of Democrat-imposed lockdown. And people are being polled. They're still finding that they're in a better place than they were under Obama. So what does that tell you about Joe Biden, right? If here we are in the midst of the second recovery, this is the second time I've had to turn around the American economy. The second time. And people are still saying that they're better off than they were at the end of the Obama administration. So the fact that Joe Biden wants to drag us back there.
Obama's economy that you walked into the first time.
No. So Joe Biden is out here saying that it's his economy. He's taking credit for saving the auto industry, right? He's taking credit for ushering through the bailout and the stimulus. So he's taking credit for the economic growth under the Obama administration. So I can absolutely call it the Biden economy because he's out there claiming responsibility for it. So if the American people truly believe that in the midst of a pandemic, they're better off under me than they were under Obama Biden, I think that speaks volumes. And that's something that Joe Biden won't admit.
Mr. President, you also claim that you are a master deal maker, except since the end of July, you have been unable to strike a deal on additional federal unemployment relief. Is it because you don't care about the plight of the American families?
So the reason we don't have a coronavirus deal right now is because Nancy Pelosi doesn't want one. She thinks it's politically advantageous to cause pain to the American people. She's using your pain. I'm going to speak directly to the American people right now. She's using your pain. She's using your suffering. She's using your plight as pawns in her political chess game. She is using you as leverage. The reason that we do not have a stimulus package is not because I don't care. It's because Nancy Pelosi doesn't care enough to remove the poison pills that she's added, right? She has added health care for illegal aliens. This idea that if an illegal alien goes into the hospital, we should have to pay for their bills. Added stimulus for illegal aliens. That's the idea that in order for you to get another stimulus check, we also have to send stimulus checks to illegal aliens, right? This idea that every single liberal city and state in the country should get massive bailouts. Listen, Republicans in Congress had a very common sense compromise Sure, we'll give the money to the states, but they can only use it on shortfalls, budget shortfalls that are post-pandemic, meaning they cannot use it to make up ground and to pay off debts that they had incurred before the pandemic. And Democrats struck it down. We had a very common sense proposal as well when it comes to schools, that, yeah, we'll give schools all the funding they need to reopen, but schools that choose to reopen will get more funding than those that need to go virtual, because by virtue of reopening, they would have more expenses. Democrats shot it down. They want virtual classes to receive as much federal funding as the schools that are actually reopening in person. So it's madness. What Nancy Pelosi's done is she has used American families as leverage in her political gamesmanship, and it's disgraceful. And I won't allow it. Listen, I've signed executive orders to try and provide the relief that I can to the American people, but I will not allow Nancy Pelosi to politicize the pandemic and use it to push through policy agenda items that they've been pushing for years. I just won't allow it.
I would now like to switch over to climate change. This is something your opponent is very passionate about. But the first question is to you. Do you believe that climate change is real?
Very interesting. Very interesting that this is the question of the night, because this third debate is supposed to be about foreign policy. Traditionally, it's been about foreign policy. So I'm going to give you a very simple answer, and I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about. I believe that climate change is real, but I don't believe that man is the sole cause of it, nor that by putting through all of the things the Democrats want to do that we can have any noticeable change, as long as polluters like India and China aren't doing the same. Now, for the remainder of my minute and 40 seconds, I want to talk about foreign policy, because it's very important.
Sir, the question was about climate change.
No, and I've answered your question, and now I'm free to talk about what I want. So for the remainder minute and 30 seconds, I'm going to talk about foreign policy, because for whatever reason, you want to shield Joe Biden from his own foreign policy record. I've accomplished more in 47 months than he did in 47 years. Under my administration, I'm the first president since Dwight D. Eisenhower not to get the United States into a new foreign war. Think about that. To go all the way back to Eisenhower, I'm the only president in that time period who did not put American boots on the ground into a new foreign war. They did not devote our military resources to fighting a new fight. I'm the only one. Joe Biden went to D.C. decades ago. You know that when he was sworn in as a senator, that he was in office, he had colleagues who were born in the 1800s. That's how old Joe Biden is. And he went as a peacenik. He went as a hippie, as promising to get us out of wars. And with the exception of one or two wars that he's had to vote on, he has voted to authorize every single military engagement, every single war since he was elected. So it's very important. We've had record peace deals in the Middle East, where we have peace in the Balkans, we have peace between Israel and the Arab states, things that Joe Biden said was impossible. You look at what Joe Biden and what Barack Obama were saying, that when it comes to jobs or peace in the Middle East, you can't just wave a magic wand to make it happen. No, what it proves is that you have to get idiots like that out of power and put actual deal makers in who can put both sides at each side of the table and work out an agreement. So it's very interesting that you don't want to talk about foreign policy today. I think it would be great if the American people got to actually hear from Joe about how much of a failure his foreign policy was. But honestly, it's par for the course. I don't know why I'm so surprised that you and the Presidential Commission on Debates are doing so much to shield Joe Biden from his own record.
Mr. President, I will remind you that we are on the climate change portion of the debate. And the second question there, why did you decide to remove the United States from the Paris Climate Agreement? Do you want to protect the Earth for future generations?
I removed the United States from the Paris Climate Agreement for a couple reasons. It was unconstitutional. It was pushed through as an agreement specifically to avoid congressional ratification requirements. And additionally, it's nothing but a wealth redistribution scheme, an attempt to take Americans' wealth and redistribute it to countries that have no actual intention of making any changes. Since 2000, the United States has seen a reduction in greenhouse emissions by 10%. When you look at China, when you look at India, you're talking about 100% increases, 200% increases in greenhouse emissions over that time. We're the only ones. We're out of the deal, and we're still making our air cleaner. So I went out of it because it has nothing to do with helping the environment. It has to do with redistributing wealth. Now, I have a minute and 30 seconds of uninterrupted time according to the rules. I want to talk about Hunter Biden's laptop, because this is not Russian disinformation.
Sir, this is
Hunter
about
Biden,
climate change, Mr. President.
And I answered your question. Respectfully,
so I would like that you would stick to...
I answered your question. I answered your question. Hunter Biden's a crackhead. He smoked crack. He went to drop his laptop off at a laptop repairman less than 5 miles away from Daddy's home. He forgot to pick it up. Per the agreement that he signed, and we can show the documents, his signature on it. Per the agreement, when he didn't show up and he didn't pay for the repair, that laptop became the property of the repair company. That guy, that patriot, opened up that laptop, And what he saw was so disgusting, he sent it to the FBI. Inappropriate pictures of children, texting about inappropriate experiences with children, evidence of money laundering, evidence that Joe Biden was using his son going around the world to do business deals and his son kicking money back to the vice president, evidence that Joe Biden actually met with Hunter Biden's business associates while he was vice president. Really shameful stuff. They gave it to the FBI, and the FBI sat on it for a year. They allowed me to be impeached. I was impeached because I said what Joe and Hunter Biden were doing looks horrible and it should be investigated. The FBI was investigating it at the time, but I was impeached for it. Absolutely shameful. These people are crooks. They're criminals. And I'm not going to say one more word about climate change until Joe Biden actually answers an honest question about why he was sending his son around the world to earn a living for the Biden family on Joe Biden's name.
Well, Mr. President, the third question is still about climate change. You brag about cutting regulations more than any other president. Why are you bragging about damaging the environment? And this is about climate change, sir.
So, yeah, I cut regulations because what the Obama-Biden administration did was destroying businesses. This idea that if you're a farmer and you want to dig a drainage ditch or you want to dig a pond for your livestock to be able to drink, that the Obama administration could come in and treat it as a navigable waterway. Think about that. Navigable waterways, traditionally, it's been defined as a waterway that can be traversed using a dugout canoe. That's a watercraft that has the smallest amount of displacement, a dugout canoe. That has been the definition of what a navigable waterway, which is how the United States is able to regulate the clean water of the United States, right? So they've redefined drainage ditches, storage ponds, irrigation as navigable waterways to put farmers and ranchers out of business. So I got rid of regulations that were hurting the economy, not to make the environment more messy, but to give farmers a chance to actually earn a living, to actually produce, right? Ranchers to actually produce. So what the Obama-Biden administration did was absolutely despicable. It was overreach, and the fact that it was allowed to go on for 8 years was truly shameful. So I have 50 seconds, and I think it's very interesting that tonight's debate will not include any questions about the Supreme Court. Just today, Joe Biden announced that he wanted to announce a commission to decide the future of the American judiciary. AKA, he wants to set aside unelected people who you, the American people, have no say in deciding who they are. He wants to let them decide what our court will look like. In other words, he wants to pack the Supreme Court. It's this idea that if he doesn't like how the Supreme Court is ruling, he will keep adding leftist judges until he gets a majority that he likes. Absolutely disgusting that Joe Biden will probably be able to skate through tonight, not even having to answer about his court packing scheme. But I'm going to continue asking it tonight until he answers the question, because it's about time the American people get an answer. He says that you don't deserve to know what his position on court packing is before the election. I disagree. I think every American deserves to know whether Joe Biden intends to pack the Supreme Court and destroy the judiciary. They deserve to know it now, and I hope that Joe Biden will actually give us an answer.
Thank you for that, Mr. President. Now we're going to move on to national security. Mr. President, you promised to build a wall that Mexico would pay for in order to protect the Americans from Mexican rapists and murderers. 4 years later, however, Mexico hasn't
Such a
paid
dishonest question. Such a dishonest question.
I'm asking the question, sir. Mexico hasn't paid a cent, and almost all border wall construction has been in areas that already had a fence. Are you willing to look into the camp? I have my time, sir. Are you willing to look into the camera and tell the American people you failed them? So
Mexico is paying. They're paying both through increased tariffs. We signed a new trade deal. We got rid of NAFTA and got the USMCA. So Mexico is paying more into our country through me renegotiating trade deals. They're also paying in the sense that they are deploying troops both to their northern border and their southern border to stop illegal alien caravans from marching towards the United States. So Mexico is paying a ton to help secure the United States. And if elected, we have a number of proposals that we want to push through to actually make Mexico pay into the U.S. Treasury and help pay for border wall construction that's already taken place and additional wall construction that we vitally and desperately need. It's such a dishonest question because what I said, I did not say that all Mexicans were rapists and murderers. I didn't say that we needed one to protect against that. What I said is that many of the people that Mexico sends here are rapists and murderers, and some I assume are good people. And it's so dishonest for people like you to take those comments out of context and throw them back at me. But it's interesting. You say that I failed the American people because the border wall has been put up in all areas where fencing already exists. That is a complete ridiculous assertion. Our border fences, our border wall is going up in areas that have been majority vehicle barriers. Vehicle barriers are not fences. Vehicle barriers are designed to stop trucks, to stop cars. Vehicle barriers do not stop pedestrians. Border wall is going up in areas where the barrier is so unsecure, a toddler could sneak through. We're talking about some areas that had just chain link fence that was 3 feet tall, where a grade school student could climb over. But we didn't have a secure border. We're putting up 15, 20, 30-foot border wall sections that are very hard to climb over. Sometimes they get over and sometimes they fall and hurt themselves. But listen, this idea that we're only putting wall where wall already existed is complete fabrication. We were putting up border wall sections in areas that had unsecure fencing or vehicle barriers that did nothing to prevent pedestrian border crossers. So I reject the question, and anyone who really wants to see the Department of Homeland Security is putting up graphics every week showing how many miles of border fencing has been built. Their goal is to finish 500 miles by the end of the year, and they're on track to do so.
Mr. President, the FBI has confirmed that the biggest threat to America is not Islamic extremism, but rather white supremacy, something you have refused to denounce. How does it feel knowing you support the biggest threat to America?
Such a dishonest question. Such a dishonest question. So Islamic extremism still poses a threat to the country. The reason that it might not be at the top of that list is we've done so much to keep the country safe, they can't get in. We implemented the travel ban to prevent people from coming into the United States from countries that don't vet people. That has helped us tremendously. We've stopped refugee admission, unvetted refugee admissions. So we've taken huge steps to safeguard that. This idea that I support white supremacy or that I don't denounce white supremacy is, let's be honest, it's a crock of shit. Absolutely. I have denounced white supremacy.
National television.
I have denounced white supremacy more than anyone else in the history of American politics. I will denounce anyone you want. What's really interesting is that you're not asking Joe Biden to denounce Antifa. And what's ridiculous is the same FBI agents that say white supremacy is the biggest threat to the country refuse to even acknowledge that Antifa is an organization. They say Antifa is just an idea. Well, Joe, I'd love for you to comment about how ideas can beat people senseless in the street, how ideas can extort businesses, how ideas can terrorize neighborhoods. These are very active ideas and they're very organized ideas. But this idea that I support white supremacy, ridiculous. The notion that white supremacy is the biggest threat our country faces, ridiculous. The biggest threat we face is the Antifa goons that support Joe Biden running around and burning American cities to the ground. Just today, Officer Chauvin in Minneapolis, they dropped the third-degree murder charge against him. Minneapolis will probably burn tonight because they are too spineless. They've gotten rid of their police. They're too spineless to stop it. That is the biggest threat to America. Unchecked leftism, running amok, destroying our cities, and terrorizing our neighborhoods. And the fact that Joe Biden to this day still has not denounced it, absolutely shameful.
Mr. President, when you took office, you slashed refugee admissions and implemented a Muslim ban to stop Muslims from entering the United States. Why is it that whenever you talk about national security accomplishments, it always involves race?
Again, a disgusting, disgusting comment. Interestingly enough, Islam is not a race, it's a religion. So even if I did implement a Muslim ban, which I didn't, it wouldn't be racist because Muslims are not a race of people. So I would love for you to get your facts straight, but accusing me of being a racist for targeting one area of the world and targeting people regardless of their race, simply because of their nationality, their passport, absolutely disgusting. You should be ashamed of yourself. We didn't have a Muslim ban. What we had was a targeted ban on a select number of states, countries. And the reason those countries were targeted was because we either couldn't trust them to give us data on their citizens, or they were just simply unable to. And interestingly enough, the list of countries that we included in our travel ban were pulled directly from a Barack Hussein Obama executive order targeting those same countries, saying that they couldn't be trusted. Listen, when someone comes into the United States, when they show up at our border checkpoint or at our customs, we look at their ID and we want to find out who they are, right? In the old days, we pick up a phone. Now it's all electronically. We ping their home country and we ask for their criminal records, right? We ask for all of their records. In a place like Somalia, where most of the country is run by warlords and the actual government has zero to almost no power, right? Somalia does not have the ability to return a criminal background check on someone who's a Somali citizen. And even if they did, we can't trust that their passports are secure because they're so easily faked. So we took countries like this, countries like North Korea, where we can't trust them actually working with our State Department to vet their citizens. Those are the countries on the list. Interestingly enough, if it was a Muslim ban, many more countries would have been added to the list. But it wasn't, right? The travel ban, affected a very small percentage of the Muslim world. The vast majority of the world's Muslims were unaffected by the ban. It had nothing to do with religion. It had nothing to do with race. It had to do with the fact that the states refused to cooperate with our State Department to help us protect our citizens and enforce our immigration law. So really disgusting question, but honestly, it's par for the course with you.
Well, then that would allow me to pivot to race in America, Mr. President. And the first question there is for you. Mr. President, today a judge dropped the third-degree murder charge against George Floyd's killer. While he still faces unintentional murder and manslaughter charges, he no longer faces any charge for deliberately killing Floyd. Do you support this murderer getting off?
So I support the justice system going through the process and him getting a fair trial. Everyone deserves a fair trial before an impartial jury of their peers. My concern is that the media coverage has been so slanted. It has been the media has rushed to judgment. I don't think it's possible for him to have a fair jury. I don't think he can have a jury of his peers from Minneapolis that doesn't already think he's a murderer. And interestingly enough, George Floyd died with a lethal amount of fentanyl in his system. There are videos from a previous arrest where, as he was being arrested, he said most of the same stuff, and he was caught swallowing drugs to hide the drugs. There's video footage suggesting that he might have done the same in this last traffic stop. Listen, what happened to George Floyd is horrible, and we should always do what we can to make sure that no one, regardless of race, regardless of creed, regardless of anything, right? No one dies in police custody. But this idea that just because he passed away, and I'll remind you that he actually asked to be put on the ground. He didn't like sitting in the car. He asked to be put on the ground so he could lay on the ground, prompting them to have to use techniques to restrain him. Right? We all agree that no one should die in police custody, but this idea that just because someone passed away, it makes the cop a murderer. When you look at the video footage, you see they were doing everything they could to keep him calm, to be respectful. I'm out. So I want the process to go through. I want him to get a fair trial. I don't know if it's possible now, but I want him to have a fair trial. And the fact that they are dropping charges now so early in the process shows that he was overcharged. There was a rush to judgment. There was a rush to throw as much as they could at him, hoping that something stuck. And it's a very bad look for that prosecutor, who I will remind you is an Antifa supporter. Very bad look for that prosecutor to already be down one charge because he overcharged. I think it says a lot about what was going on.
Mr. President, your opponent has admitted to this, but will you finally admit that you have white privilege?
No, I will not. I mean, I will admit that my dad was a wealthy man and that I am in a better position because he was able to help me, right? I say it all the time. He gave me a small loan of $1 million, and I've turned that into a multi-billion-dollar empire. I would challenge anyone to do the same. It's not easy, right? It's not easy to do over decades to keep an empire like the one I've built afloat. I don't believe I have white privilege. I think you can go every state in the country, you can find white people who are living in poverty. Right? You can find people of every race in poverty. You can find trailer parks where in Appalachia or in Detroit where you have white Americans living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to get by. If white privilege exists, they wouldn't be in those trailer parks. Right? If this idea that simply by virtue of being white, you automatically have more than someone who's black, I just don't buy it. Right? I think it's a terrible thing to suggest to African Americans in this country that no matter what they do, they're always going to be one step below a white man. We fought a civil war over this idea. We had the civil rights movement over this idea that every American, regardless of their skin color, should be treated equally. And this idea that they're trying to resurrect these old ideas. I mean, white privilege is just repackaged white superiority. Right? White privilege is just a negative way of viewing what the good old boys in the Deep South said for decades. Right? In Jim Crow South, the idea that whites have more privileges because they are superior. Democrats have just taken out the superiority part. So no, I don't buy it at all. I completely understand that I come from a family that was more well off than other people, but I've traveled this country, Josh, and I've seen Americans of all races, all creeds, living in poverty, who need a helping hand up. And I'll tell you, under my administration, the previous administration, the Biden-Obama administration, they did everything they could to get more people on government welfare. More people went on food stamps, right? More people went on all these different welfare programs. Under my administration, those people are getting off the programs, not because we're kicking them off, but because they're getting jobs. And I think it should be the goal of everyone on these programs, not to be on those programs in perpetuity, but to get a job and to get off them so they can support their family without relying on government assistance. So I disagree. I completely denounce this idea of white privilege. I think it's counterproductive. If we want to talk about a rising tide lifting all boats, let's do this. But if the notion is that we should only lift black or brown people because white people already have inherent privilege, I'm out. I want nothing to do with that, and you're a racist if you say it.
Vice President Joe Biden has unapologetically called you racist. Is he right?
No, he's wrong. I'm not a racist. This is the same kind of tired talking points we hear over and over again. He's a racist. Anytime Democrats want to defeat a Republican, they call him a racist. Remember, they called Mitt Romney a racist. Mitt Romney is anything but a racist. He's barely even a Republican at this point. They call everyone a racist, right? With me, racist doesn't work, so they start calling me a white supremacist. It's really, they call me a Nazi. Listen, if we look at the history of these words used to mean something. Saying that someone's a white supremacist used to mean something. But now it's thrown out. They call Chris Pratt. Anyone know Chris Pratt, the actor, famous Hollywood actor? He's a Christian. They called him a white supremacist without any evidence. They're just trying to brand him as a white supremacist. So those words should mean something. And the problem is that there are real white supremacists out there. They're not nearly as plentiful as they used to. There are real Nazis. They're not nearly as plentiful as they used to. It used to be. But they're getting a pass now because everyone's being lumped in with them. So no, it's very dangerous. I'm not a racist. Joe Biden's a racist. Joe Biden's the person who said he was worried about integration because he didn't want his kids growing up in a racial jungle. Right? Joe Biden's the one who stood up on stage and said that if black Americans dared to vote Republican, the Republicans would put them all back in chains. Joe Biden's the racist. I'm not a racist. The only time I ever became a racist is when I ran for president. No one called me a racist when I was receiving an award alongside Rosa Parks. No one called me a racist then. No one called me a racist when I was receiving an award alongside Muhammad Ali. No one called me a racist then. No one called me a racist when I was hanging out with Al Sharpton or Jesse Jackson. No one called me a racist. They only called me a racist when I ran for president as a Republican. And that should tell you all you need to know. But no, the real racist is Joe Biden. The real racists are the Democrats who want to keep people down and want to keep them dependent on government because God forbid they think for themselves. And I think you're going to see, Josh, in this election, you're going to see a record amount of black Americans voting for Trump because they know that the lies that the Democrat Party have fed them for so long are just that. They're lies. And they deserve to be able to think for themselves and vote the way they please.
Okay, Mr. President. The next section is on leadership. And the first question is, when you were elected, you promised to be a president for all Americans. But polling shows the country is more divided than when you took office. Are you ready to admit you are not cut out to be president for all Americans?
Such a disgusting question. Such a disgusting question. I mean, you think about this. When I was elected, we always like to talk about peaceful transition of power. I don't know if you're going to ask about it, but everyone's asked about it these days. Will there be a peaceful transition of power? I wasn't given a peaceful transition of power. They spied on my campaign, right? They've spent 4 years trying to lock me up. They're still promising to lock me up if I lose. Think about that. We've never had that in this country. So it's not my fault that leftists have lost their minds and decided that Trump derangement syndrome will drive them instead of unity, instead of country first. No, I did everything I could to try and bring this country together. The problem is Democrats never sat down at the table. Not once. They've never actually negotiated in good faith for anything. We had a chance with infrastructure. Unlike Republicans, I support big infrastructure projects. We have to fix this country's roads, crumbling bridges. We have to. Democrats just refuse to do it, even though if Barack Obama was in office, they would have passed the same bill I was asking for. They refused to do it because they didn't want to give me a win. And I want you to think about, Americans, think about this. What does it say about Democrats? That even though there were items, agenda items, where we agreed, where we could work together, even though they actually could work with me, they chose not to because they didn't want it to look like I was winning. They would rather the American people lose than me be able to claim victory. That's not America first. That's party first. People like Nancy Pelosi have no interest in actually governing the country. People like Chuck Schumer, crying Chuck, have no interest in actually putting the country first. They want to further the Democrat Party. So no, and I reject the notion. I am the president for all Americans, whether they like me or not. but there are a lot of Americans who have spent the last 4 years trying to undo the 2016 election, and that has only driven us further apart.
All right, Mr. President, next question. You have criticized Vice President Biden for hiding in his basement, even though your recklessness led to you contracting COVID-19. Explain how you are a good leader if you don't even have the sense to keep yourself safe.
Such a dishonest question. Such a dishonest question. If the Biden hide in the basement strategy would have worked, Kamala Harris's staffers wouldn't have tested positive for coronavirus last week. So this notion that Biden's doing it right and I was doing it wrong, as I mentioned before, masks do not necessarily keep you safe. The CDC responded to Tucker Carlson's show last week and said that at no point did they ever say that masks will keep the wearer safe, that masks are primarily intended to keep other people safe from the droplets that the mask wearer would be breathing out. So I got coronavirus because I can't afford to hide in a basement like Joe Biden does. Joe Biden loves to say, when he was asked earlier, like, what did he do to help the pandemic? He said he couldn't do anything. He's a private citizen. Josh, I talk to private citizens all the time. I talk to people in business all the time, right? We mobilize businesses through the Defense Production Act to take private citizens, private entities, private companies, and retool them to make ventilators, to make PPE, to make testing supplies, right? Joe Biden, as a private citizen, could have called me just like they did. But Joe Biden chose not to because he isn't actually interested in fixing the problems. He wants to hide in his basement. And this week, he did not come out of his basement once between Monday and Thursday. I think a lot of that is hiding from the Hunter Biden emails, which I call the laptop from hell. But no, I have to be out because I'm the president of the United States. How can I be, to go to your last question, how can I be a president for all Americans if I'm hiding in a basement? No, I'm out and about. I'm showing strength. I'm showing resolve. I'm showing calm. If I was hiding in a basement like Joe, I would probably be impeached again for not fulfilling my constitutional duties. But no, I knew that it was a risk. I knew that going out and being with people, being with Gold Star families would put me at risk. And it's a risk I had to take because the country's worth it. I could have hidden in the bunker like Joe did for months on end, but I chose not to because, as I said, the country is worth it. The only question is, why doesn't Joe think the same?
Thank you for that, Mr. President. The next question is also to you. Mr. President, you recently said that if Joe Biden won the election, you would have to flee the country. What does that say about your legacy that not only would you be one of the few incumbents not to have a re-election, but the only one to flee the country to avoid accountability?
So it was a joke. It was a joke. The idea, and I didn't say I was running away from Biden or anything like that. What I said was that if Joe Biden won, if I actually lose to this horrible candidate, the worst candidate that's ever run for president, if I actually lose to him, I don't think I'd be able to bear it, and I think I'd have to lose just to escape the shame. It was a joke. It was a joke. But I think it's very interesting that leftists were torn on the issue of whether I would leave the country. Half of them were giddy with excitement, the idea that one of their fellow Americans, a job creator, would leave the country and listen, I take all of those jobs with me. Half of them were giddy, and half of them were furious because they want me to die in prison for non-existent crimes. Let's be completely honest. They don't just want to win the election. There's a large contingent of the Democrat Party who wants me to rot in prison for nothing. Absolutely nothing. So it was a joke, what I said, and it had nothing to do with me trying to escape any blame for anything. It was me saying I'd be so ashamed of losing to a horrible candidate like Joe Biden that I wouldn't be able to live with myself and I have to leave. But I do think it's quite telling. Just like when I got coronavirus, that leftists were cheering cheering. There were Democrats outside of my hospital, outside of Walter Reed Medical Center, holding up signs, anti-Trump signs, while I had COVID-19. People on Twitter, people on television even, celebrating my diagnosis, hoping I would die. Right? This is not normal, folks. This is not the way elections are supposed to be run. So no, I'm not going to leave the country. It was a joke. But let's be honest here. Half of the Democrats want me to, and the other half don't because they think that I've committed non-existent crimes. So again, I'm not doing anything to drive this country apart. I'm trying to bring us all together, and I think we actually were on the way there. It's the Democrats, the do-nothing Democrats, anti-Trump Democrats, and yes, some never-Trumpers who become so deranged with their Trump hatred that they don't care. To them, it's the ends justify the means. We saw the Lincoln Project, whatever they call themselves these days. They were actually parroting Iranian misinformation, claiming that I support some Proud Boy organization that I was trying to intimidate voters. They actually got caught spreading Iranian disinformation to dissuade people from voting for me. Think about how crazy you have to be, how much you have to hate the president to team up with the Iranian regime to lie to the American people. It's just shameful. So one way or another, we're going to face a reckoning in this country where the Trump derangement syndrome that we've seen over the last 4 years, we're going to have to deal with that. If I win or whether I don't, these people can never be allowed to hold an ounce of power again. And I will fight with every single fiber of my being to make sure that they don't do that.
All right, Mr. President. Mr. Biden had the last closing statement. I would let you also have the closing statement for the evening.
So I think it's really interesting that last debate was canceled. The last debate was canceled, and the Presidential Commission on Debates didn't even call us to ask for our statement on it. They say that it was canceled because I didn't want to show up. And they say that they went virtual because it was too dangerous for me to appear. But Joe and I both had dueling town halls on the same night on different networks in person. No, the Commission on Debates had to cancel that debate because their moderator was caught lying about anti-Trump tweets that he sent to one of my former employees, who's now turned against me because he doesn't like that he was fired. It's very interesting that we're having this debate, again, that we didn't include any comments on foreign policy. I think the foreign policy differences between me and Joe have never been more stark. I mean, you vote for me, you're getting peace. We're bringing our troops back. You vote for Biden, you're just going to get more war. And it's crazy that we've actually come to that point where the Democrat candidate is pro-war and the Republican isn't. But I'll tell you, I think that's really endemic of what we've seen over the last 4 years. No matter what position I take, the Democrats take an opposite position, no matter what. Sometimes you actually catch them in a little bit of gymnastics, flipping back and forth so often they kind of get whiplash, right? If I'm pro-peace, they're pro-war. If I support a strike, they're against it, right? If I'm for masks, they're against masks. If I'm against masks, they're for masks, right? No matter what we do, no matter what I say, Democrats are going to take the opposite position. That's not what the country needs. The country needs people who are going to make hard choices. We're going to work across the aisle to get things done, not a political party in power whose sole message is that they are anti-Trump. People voting for Biden, the majority of the people supporting Biden do not actually support him. They are just against me, which I think is very sad. I think it's very sad we've gotten to the point where we're going to elect a man who's obviously dealing with dementia, dealing with Alzheimer's, and they're going to do so because they don't like me. It's very sad for this country. So I hope and pray that I can earn your vote, and I hope and pray that you'll do the right thing and give me 4 more years, because honestly, the best is yet to come. I've worked so hard over the past 4 years to make America great again. We got this China virus that we're taking care of, but we know that next year is going to be the best year ever, and I'm just so fearful that if Joe Biden is given the reins, that all the progress we've made over the past 4 years will be undone and will be dragged back into an Obama recession. So I pray that you vote for me, and I pray that we can come together as a country.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Biden, for coming out today and taking part in this debate. We'd like to thank everyone who tuned in, but we are not done. We would like to now toss to the Conservative Daily program, where Max McGuire will take over and tell us why Joe Biden is running for Senate.
So that was our kind of our deal, our little mock debate. Usually we would have had Joe, but Joe is out golfing. Originally, before he was golfing, we were going to have one of us do Joe, one of us do Trump. I was probably going to do Joe Biden and just make it crazy. He had to go and do a charity golf tournament, so I had to do it. I had to do it alone. So those are just some of it. Honestly, what I think Trump needs to do tonight is he needs to answer the questions. Like, when you get to climate change, you don't need to spend 2 minutes on climate change. And the great part about the rules is Trump is going to have 2 minutes of uninterrupted time. Uninterrupted time where he's not interrupted. Josh was kind of doing the anti-Trump moderator, interrupting me. I don't think they'll do that to Trump. So when they ask him about climate change, he should give them a 15-second answer, and then he should spend the remainder of his time talking about what the debate commission doesn't want him to talk about. Right? You can give a climate change answer succinctly without having to go into everything, because no one actually cares about climate change. It doesn't even peak in the top 5, 6 issues on voters' minds. The fact that we're now getting it in back-to-back debates is ridiculous. But Trump should use those easy questions to give a yes or no answer. Like, do you think climate change is real? Yes, I think it's real. I don't think that it's entirely man-made, and I don't think anything we do can stop China and India from polluting the earth even more. Easy question, right? I just got that out in under 10 seconds, leaving the extra minute and 50 seconds of his uninterrupted time to talk about Hunter Biden, right? To talk about Joe Biden's corruption, to talk about his Alzheimer's. Trump's got to bring it up. Trump's got to bring up the fact that Sleepy Joe is not playing with a full deck. He's kind of talked about it a lot. He's not all there. He's not playing with a full deck. So he's got to bring that up tonight. His creepiness, how he sniffs kids, that's the stuff that resonates the most, believe it or not, with voters. How creepy Joe Biden is. So that they've got to play these cards because they're running out of time. I still think that Trump can win. I'm very enthusiastic over the fact that Democrat early ballot returns are not at the levels that they should be if the polls are correct. So when you see a poll saying Biden is ahead by 15 points, ridiculous polls, and you know that the vast majority of Democrat votes come early, when you see Republicans keeping pace with Democrats in early votes, you know that it's not going to happen. Right? It's just not going to happen. So I'm very, very heartened by the numbers I'm seeing. It's still entirely possible and very likely that Trump can win. But he's running out of time to seal the deal. He's running out of time to seal the deal. He has to land some real punches against Joe. He also has to let Joe do the talking because when Joe Biden talks, it falls apart. Right? Joe Biden should have to be forced to defend how he believes that 8-year-olds should be allowed to change their gender. Like that's freaking insane. The idea that an 8-year-old can say, "Mommy, I know I'm a girl. I want to be a boy now," and that's just it. Like that's insane. So Joe Biden should be forced to defend his policies. But what we're seeing from all these questions is that the moderators are actually designing this to make it easy on Biden, make Trump be on defense. Really despicable. I still can't believe that they're not doing foreign policy at this debate. But we'll see. So we do have, Mr. Producer, can you pull up that image that I sent you from yesterday of the hot wing challenge for tonight? I forgot to send you over it today. See if you can pull it up. And I'll just keep talking, put it up on the screen as you find it. Everyone also in the chat, give Josh a round of applause for reading the questions. I think he did a great job. Give Josh some love in the comment section. I kind of sprung this on him this morning. He didn't really have a whole lot to prepare. So give Josh some love in the comment section. And Josh, if you can pull up that image from the hot wing challenge I sent you yesterday, it should be the last image. There we go. So tonight we are doing a watch party for the final presidential debate. And since my wife is pregnant, I can't drink a ton because I have to be able to take her to the hospital at a minute's notice. So what we're doing tonight is instead we are doing a hot wing challenge. Joe will be on. We've sent him with 1 bottle of hot sauce. That last dab, 2 million Scoville. Joe should, unless he conveniently left it behind, he should have that. So we're going to be doing 9 different buffalo wings with 9 different sauces. And every 10 minutes I have to eat a wing. And it goes from 1,200 Scoville for the Tabasco all the way up to the last wing of the night, 2 million Scoville units. 2 million, just so you know what 2 million means. 2 million is a Carolina Reaper pepper, the hottest pepper on earth. So I've tried every single one of these sauces. I did, with the exception of 2. Yesterday I tried every single one of these sauces except for the 10 o'clock sauce, which is the bomb, and the 1020 sauce, which is the last dab. I couldn't do the bomb. I hate the bomb. The bomb is the worst among it. I think that's going to be the worst of the night. And I didn't want to experience the last dab. I want it to be fresh when I taste it. All the other ones, no problem. I can do that, no problem. Those are the only 2 I'm very, very worried about. But that's going to be tonight. We're kicking off the live stream at 8:30 Eastern. We'll have a little bit of a pregame talking about what's going to happen. And then we kickstart at 9 with 1 wing every 10 minutes until we get to the last dab at the end of the night. No dairy products. I'm not gonna drink. Well, I might have a little bit of blue cheese dressing on the earlier wings just because I like the taste of blue cheese. But I won't use any milk products to get rid of the heat later on until the end of the debate. And then I'll probably chug a glass of milk. So make sure you tune in for that. That's going to be 8:30 tonight, going live on Facebook and YouTube, 8:30 Eastern. And then we'll have a little bit of a post-game analysis, talk about the debate after as well. So yeah, make sure you tune in for that. I also will publish a drinking game. I just have to put it together. Joe might be playing it. I won't be playing it, but you are all free to. Or we can just drink without the game. Let me know in the comment section what you want. Either way. So make sure you tune in for that. That's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited. I was pissed that they canceled the last debate on us. We saw there was no excuse to cancel it other than the debate moderators' anti-Trump stances. But I'm excited for tonight because I think tonight is going to be Listen, it's Trump's last chance to land some serious punches against Joe Biden, and he needs to do it. He is now either leading or within 1 point in the latest polls in every state he needs to win. So Trump needs that moment. Remember Hillary Clinton, where he said, "Well, if I was elected, you'd be in jail." He needs a moment like that, where everyone just goes, "Oh!" He needs a moment like that that utterly disarms Joe Biden and makes him look more electable. Right? He needs that moment. So I'm hopeful that he can do it. He has a lot of people training him. I'm confident that he can do it. I just hope that he doesn't interrupt as much and that he gives Joe Biden enough rope to hang himself. Because if you do, Joe Biden will do it. Well, that's going to be it for this edition of the podcast. I want to let everyone know that we also have an audio version of the podcast. I say it every time. Very important that you subscribe to that if you haven't already. Also very important that you leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We've had a couple of trolls leave us 1-star reviews. We got a 1-star review because someone didn't like that I did an impression of Kamala Harris's voice. So as stupid as that is, that 1-star review will hurt us in the rankings on Apple Podcasts. And that's part of the reason that we slipped from the top 120th political podcast in the country down to like 140 because of that one-star review. So please do go into Apple Podcasts if you have a Mac or iPhone. Please do go in there and leave us a 5-star review. Write a little bit about why you like the show. It'll really help us get back up in those rankings. We're also available on Google Play, which is actually changing its name, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Podbean, and we should be live on Pandora any day now. They're just finishing up getting us up on there. We'll be on Pandora as well. So we'll be pretty much everywhere you can get an audio version of the podcast. We go live 2 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday on Facebook and YouTube. Make sure you subscribe and follow us in those links in the description. Or on Parler, follow us at Conservative Daily. Be happy to follow you back. There's also a link for you to join our email newsletter. Also, you can text FREEDOM to 89517. People saying that they got the text alerts. I'm happy it worked. It's getting people onto the show when Facebook and YouTube won't give them notifications. So if you text FREEDOM to 89517, you'll get added to our text alert system, and you'll just get a friendly text saying that the show is live when we go live. So I think that's everything I have to say. Again, thank you to producer Josh for being our moderator for today's mock debate. Sorry that Joe couldn't be here, but he's out at a charity golf tournament. So we miss him, and we'll see him on Monday when he gets back. So again, my name is Max McGuire. That's going to be it for this edition of the Conservative Daily Podcast. Remember that the fight to take back our country clearly isn't over, but the only way we win is if we all stand and fight together.